defunding Planned Parenthood. The House aims to undo a rule President Obama put in place. The fight against assisted suicide.
I'm a physician. I know physicians can't reliably tell how long a patient has to live.
My conversation with Representative Andy Harris of Maryland on the future of the controversial law. The drive to abolish male and female. The author of a new book about how her Catholic faith informs her views on gender. And be a heartbeat for the world, the Holy Father's message for the Special Olympics, ahead of next month's Winter Games. On EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, February 16th, 2017. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. President Trump addresses the nation today with a wide-ranging press conference covering everything from his dislike of the media to reports that his administration is in chaos to the administration's relationship with Russia. Wyatt Goolsbee was inside the White House for the showdown and has more from the North Lawn. Wyatt.
Lauren, President Trump insists his administration is running like a fine-tuned machine, despite the fact that his top national security aide resigned and his pick for labor secretary withdrew himself from consideration. Instead, the president focused on a wide range of issues. He says he's turning the country around.
To be honest, I inherited a mess. It's a mess.
Donald Trump defending his White House in his longest press conference since taking office. He fielded questions from a clamoring press on topics ranging from the First Lady to allegations that his team is tightly linked to Russia.
The whole Russian thing, that's a ruse. That's a ruse. And by the way, it would be great if we could get along with Russia, just so you understand that. Now, tomorrow you'll say, Donald Trump wants to get along with Russia. This is terrible. It's not terrible.
The president insists he has no clandestine ties to Russia, and when pressed for his response to recent Russian military maneuvers, he refused to answer.
I'm not going to tell you anything about what response I do. I don't talk about military response.
Speaking for over an hour, Trump ranted against mainstream media outlets.
Where are you from?
BBC.
Okay. Here's another beauty.
He also fielded questions on violence in inner cities.
There's another Chicago that's worse than almost any of the places in the Middle East that we talk about and that you talk about every night on the newscasts.
The president is vowing to fix these dangerous environments and promote health and education moving forward.
Trump called the press conference to announce his nomination for Secretary of Labor, Alexander Acosta. He takes the place of former fast food CEO Andrew Putster, who withdrew himself from consideration yesterday after losing support from a number of Senate Republicans. Acosta has been confirmed 3 times by the Senate for past government posts, and the president expects him to move through the process quickly. Lauren?
Wyatt, President Trump also announced that he will release a new executive order on immigration soon. What else do we know about that?
Lauren, yes, the president said that a new executive order will come as soon as next week, that it will, quote, comprehensively protect our country. He specifically said the new order is going to be very much tailored to the legal decision that put his last executive order on hold. Lauren?
Wyatt Goolsbee reporting from the White House. The push is on for confirmation of Judge Neil Gorsuch, not just in the halls of the Capitol, but on the airwaves.
Neil Gorsuch is dedicated to the Constitution, and he understands the great power it gives to the American people.
It also had a testimony from an Obama supporter. The Judicial Crisis Network launched a media campaign to support Gorsuch, calling him a qualified constitutionalist with bipartisan support. The Senate Judiciary Committee says it will begin confirmation hearings for Gorsuch on March 20th, lasting 3 to 4 days. Republicans hope to wrap up the confirmation process for the president's Supreme Court pick by April. The House moves to block a rule protecting Planned Parenthood funding. In December, the Obama administration banned states from keeping federal family planning funds away from groups that do abortions, like Planned Parenthood. Correspondent Jason Calvi is at the Capitol. Jason.
Lauren, a double hit against Planned Parenthood today. First, the House approves undoing Obama's last-ditch effort to save Planned Parenthood's tax money. That rule went into effect just days before President Trump's inauguration. The Congressional Review Act lets Congress repeal agency acts like this 230 voted to repeal the abortion rule and 188 voted to keep it. Beforehand, the floor erupted in debate about life and abortion.
You know, this is a great day for life today. It's a great day to celebrate that taxpayer funding going to places that provide abortions like Planned Parenthood will no longer be the law of the land.
The war on women is escalating and more dangerous with H.J. Res 43. Let's not beat around the bush. Let's call this bill what it really is. It's a backdoor attempt to restrict access to a woman's constitutional right to an abortion.
We're told the Senate would need to pick this bill up using a fast-track procedure, but the window is closing very quickly. There are just 3 days left for Congress to act. Now, that's not the only way Republicans are moving to strip funds from Planned Parenthood. The GOP huddled behind closed doors today to talk about repealing Obamacare, and part of that is to block Planned Parenthood from federal Medicaid money. Nearly half of their annual $1.1 billion budget comes from the government. Lauren?
Republicans are debating their repeal and replacement plan. Do we have a timetable for when they are going to go forward with it?
Well, after that closed-door meeting, Speaker Ryan today says it's their intention to have a repeal and replacement plan when they come back from the President's Day break, which begins right now.
Jason Calvi on Capitol Hill. Thank you, Jason. Representative Andy Harris, a Republican from Maryland, joins us now. You just came out of the House Freedom Caucus meeting. Any update on plans to repeal Obamacare?
Well, the House GOP conference met this morning, the whole Republican conference, and they outlined in broad brushes what we're going to do with the replacement plan. We are going to repeal Obamacare. It's not going to work. Humana dropped out just this week. Other companies may, so it needs reform, and we're going to make sure that people who have coverage now, that they can keep their coverage, but we're eventually going to give the states much more flexibility in how to deal with the health care problems that are specific to their state.
But one of the problems that you're facing, I believe, with your constituents is that word eventually. I think people want action. What is taking so long?
Well, you know, the president has said that we want to pass a part of the replacement with the repeal. So we could have passed the repeal bill just like we did 2 years ago. We could have done that already. But the president has insisted that his promise to the American people was that we will actually make their health care insurance market better. At the same time, we take away Obamacare. So the problem is we have to make sure we have that replacement in hand as we go forward with this transition.
All right. Also this week, there was one chance to stop D.C.'s assisted suicide bill, and it failed. But now you have decided that you would like to go through this complicated legislative procedure to block the bill. Why are you doing that?
Well, you know, the system that's set up right now that expired this week would be the 30 days that Congress has to act in order to turn back a D.C. law. The fact of the matter is very few things happen in Congress in 30 days. We're in the middle of a new administration. We're having huge discussions about things like Obamacare. There just wasn't adequate time to do it through the normal process. So we have a second process, the one that we use very frequently, including on D.C. abortion funding. We go to the appropriations bills, and we just insist that the D.C. government doesn't spend any money on physician-assisted suicide, just like it can't spend money on abortion.
And do you think that will be successful?
I certainly hope so. I think a majority of members of Congress believe that asking physicians to help patients commit suicide is not the message we ought to send to the disabled community, for instance, who are very worried about bills like this. I'm a physician. I know physicians can't reliably tell how long a patient has to live, and that's really at the crux of this bill, as well as the fact that physicians are trained to heal patients, not to help them kill themselves.
Well, you're facing a big battle in Maryland right now, as are many states across the country. Before we go, very quickly, tell me what's happening in your state.
Well, Maryland, years ago when I was in the state legislature, we were able to defeat a physician-assisted suicide bill. It came back last year, narrowly lost. This year it's back again. It's going to be a tough fight, but we have to stand up for, again, people with disabilities, people who are ill, and tell them that the solution is not suicide. It never is. And work with them and provide alternatives and defeat efforts like this.
Representative Andy Harris of Maryland, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Also on the House floor today, a hearing on the state of religious liberty in America. Mark Irons reports.
Lauren, the mood on the floor was contentious at best. Topics of disagreement: the Trump travel ban, fighting the contraceptive mandate, and the rights of citizens to practice their beliefs in the workplace. 4 people testified: Kim Colby of the Center for Law and Religious Freedom at the Christian Legal Society, Hannah Smith, senior counsel at the Becket Fund for Religious Liberty, which defended Hobby Lobby in its case against the government, and Casey Maddox from the Alliance Defending Freedom. Congressman Steve King said he can't remember a time in our nation's history when there was such resistance to freedom of speech.
One of the things most troubling to me is that they're teaching on many of the college campuses and promoting a culture that pushes back against freedom of speech and freedom of religion.
No specific law was discussed here today, just witnesses and lawmakers debating religious liberty issues here in the United States. The chairman, Steve King, said, if we can't reason with one another, we can't progress as a nation, and he said that's what was happening here today. Lauren?
Mark Irons reporting on Capitol Hill. Thank you, Mark. The Washington State Supreme Court unanimously rules against a Washington State florist who stood up for her faith. They say she broke the state's anti-discrimination law when she wouldn't provide services for a same-sex wedding. Baronelle Stutzman says she was exercising her First Amendment rights and told the couple she couldn't provide flowers for the wedding because it goes against her Christian beliefs. Stutzman's lawyers say they will ask the U.S. Supreme Court to overturn today's decision. Indiana House panel approves a requirement for women to receive information about abortions before undergoing the procedure. The bill's author says informing women about the method could give them a chance to change their minds and save the baby. At least 2 states have passed similar measures, but in Arizona, the law was overturned. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. ISIS is taking responsibility for a car bombing in Baghdad. At least 55 people were killed and 60 others hurt. The attack happened at a car dealership in a mostly Shiite neighborhood. Despite military setbacks in parts of Iraq, ISIS has carried out almost daily attacks in Baghdad targeting Shiite Muslims. An ISIS suicide bombing targeting worshippers at a famous Muslim shrine in Pakistan kills 75 people and hurts 200 others. It's one of the deadliest attacks the country has seen in recent months. The world is at war. Strong words today from Pope Francis.
Oggi nel mondo c'è versamento di sangue.
The Holy Father says innocent people are dying because the great and powerful want more control of the earth. He says war begins in a person's heart, and it's our responsibility to sow peace in the world. There is a new diocese, bishop, and cathedral in the Catholic Church. It's on the island of Madagascar, off the coast of Africa. The Holy Father named the first bishop of Mainturano, the local parish dedicated to Our Lady of the Assumption. It will become the cathedral. The new diocese is composed of 5 cities and incorporates territory from 3 current dioceses. And Pope Francis tells a delegation from the Special Olympics that they are a sign of hope for those who commit themselves to a more inclusive society. The encouraging words came at a meeting today at the Vatican. The Holy Father also said the group is a heartbeat for the world. The Special Olympics Winter Games takes place next month in Austria. Coming up, this week's Hot Topics. Cal Thomas joins me in studio to discuss President Trump's press conference. President Trump's announcement today about a new nominee for Secretary of Labor turned into a full-blown news conference. Topics ranged from ISIS to the election to the media, as we told you earlier. Joining me now is Cal Thomas, an author and syndicated columnist who's been covering Washington and writing about it for decades. Al, so nice to have you on
Lauren.
set.
Nice to be with
really glad. What a news conference. Were you able to watch all of that?
I watched the whole thing. It was amazing. One of the most amazing news conferences I've ever seen.
Why?
Well, because I have rarely seen, going back to the days of Spiro Agnew, Nixon's vice president, any high official like this take on the media and try to hold them accountable. That's almost never done because the view is that the media are more powerful and they're going to be there long after the president, and they can, they can form the opinions of the people.
But he is being accused by the media, who have since been tweeting terrible things, that his administration is in chaos, and that is something that he is denying. Yet the National Security Advisor resigned, some cabinet picks have withdrawn. And is this an attempt by him to sort of rejigger what may actually be happening?
Well, every president has a problem with cabinet or other people. Barack Obama did, Bill Clinton did. There's always something because it's human nature. Human nature is what it is. But I think he made a good point that the Senate has been dragging its feet on confirming his full team. Now he's got a lot of people in there now. He said he has instructed his new Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, to start looking into who leaked some of this classified material because, as he correctly pointed out, that is a felony. And when you put that word felony out there, I think you put the fear of God into some of these people, and that's a good way to stop the leaks.
Right. These illegal leaks also, as you said, have happened in other administrations, and not a lot can be done about them.
Well, I think one of the reasons you're seeing this now, and I had an interview this week with the new Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, who said she had already discovered 2 moles within the Department of Education, moles left over, deliberately planted by the Obama administration. Now, the Democrats have said that this is exactly what they're going to do. The president, after the election, started peppering the various federal agencies with people who are predisposed to his policies in order to undermine President Trump. That is unprecedented. That has never happened before, in my knowledge, in all my years in Washington. And if you're going to start tossing around the phrase un-American, as we've heard today, I think that's about as un-American as you can get.
Let's take a look at what President Donald Trump did tweet. He said the real scandal here is that classified information is illegally given out by intelligence like candy. Very un-American, as you had said. So what is the solution to that?
Well, I think that the Attorney General looking into this is helpful, but you've got to root out these people. You've got to find who they are. I asked Betsy DeVos how she's going to go after them. She said, well, we've identified them now, and we're going to render their power inoperative. So you may not be able to fire them, but you can move them to a place where they will not be as damaging. This is about America. This shouldn't be about Republicans or Democrats. But nobody can get along in this town anymore. We're all at each other's throats. It's horrible.
Constantly. It never
Worst
stops.
I've ever seen it.
We're talking to somebody tomorrow about all of the noise in Washington and how to actually find peace and calm during that time. One area that has heartened pro-life Catholics is Donald Trump's pro-life support. And another issue that we've talked about is assisted suicide. So we have all of these states now moving down this train of allowing assisted suicide to happen. 7, it looks like, will have it, 22 more. What can be done in your mind? You have been in Washington for a long time and have seen these fights play out.
Well, I think you have to look at how we got to where we are. Once you abandon one category of life as worthy of protection, in this case the unborn, all other categories of human life become a threat as well. It was G.K. Chesterton, the great Catholic theologian and commentator, who said, the danger when men stop believing in God is not that they'll believe in nothing, but that they'll believe in anything. And the late Bishop Fulton Sheen said, how do you define a football field? By its boundaries. And the point he made then, back in 1979, was that when you exceed boundaries, you get into trouble. God has placed boundaries on human life and many other categories for our protection. When you exceed them, you get into deep, deep water.
Thank you so much for joining us. Before we go, I just want to express our condolences about your wife, Charlotte Ray, who died on Saturday after a long illness. You were married for 51 years. You wrote such a moving tribute to her and said, love today is seen as a feeling, but real love is a commitment, a covenant, and that's why most of us take marriage vows instead of make promises. Is that what made your marriage so successful?
That and forgiveness. I think when you realize when you take someone else under your roof, you've doubled the number of sinners.
Okay. All right. I think we're going to have to leave it there. Cal Thomas, thank you so much for joining us. Up next, we talk to the author of a new book on America's transgender debate. She calls it a scandal. And saving human history. Italian teams restore antiquities in Syria. A new book claims the gender revolution is dangerous for women. Sex Scandal, the drive to abolish male and female, says we are living in denial by erasing clear definition of the male and female sex. Joining us now, the book's author, Ashley McGuire. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
What a book. It puts everything in one place, all you need to know. You look at schools, colleges, the military, work life, home life. What was your biggest takeaway about gender in society?
I think the thing that stood out the most to me was that with all this talk of equality and in trying to achieve equality, trying to stamp out the differences between the sexes, what we end up seeing is women, time and time again, are the ones who are shortchanged by
How
that.
so?
I think because we are more vulnerable, our needs are more unique, and so the opposite is needed. What's needed is a society that looks at those differences and tries to understand them. And really, I think civil society needs to be built around the special and unique needs of women.
One of the things that you talk about is the importance of college campuses in defining this sort of language and issue. And a recent survey by the Association of American Universities found that 23% of female undergrads experience some type of sexual assault. And you say universities and colleges have become the primary engines behind making sexual difference scandalous. And now the scandal is on them. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think we've seen for decades things like women's studies departments, gender studies programs, trying to break down these differences, argue that our maleness and femaleness is a social construct, and then experimenting in dangerous ways, doing things like, we have colleges now that are actually experimenting with co-ed dorm rooms, and then at the same time wondering why when we have men and women sharing the same showers, sleeping in the same rooms or on the same floors, why we have a sexual assault epidemic.
Social media is also at play here. In 2014, Facebook allows you then to choose from 71 different ways of identifying yourself by gender, and then there are linguists who say you shouldn't use he or she, but what is it, z or zer, z, her? Anyway, so something like that. And Facebook also has a free-form field where you can fill in whatever you want. They has become the word of the year. What does all of this do to our young people who are growing up in this type of society?
Well, I think it makes it incredibly confusing, and I think we know, especially those of us who are parents, that being confused is sort of a hallmark of being a child or a teenager.
Right.
As a parent to a 4-year-old, I spend a lot of my day looking at puzzled eyes when I try to explain things.
Wait till they get to be 13.
Right. I can't speak about raising teenagers, but I think, it's one thing to sort of step back and let children explore. It's another thing to actually actively encourage the confusion, but that's what we're seeing happening.
Okay. You wrote as your closing line, only when we can all say vive la différence can men and women truly begin to live as equals. Ashley McGuire, author of Sex Scandal, The Drive to Abolish Male and Female. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
2 busts from an ancient city in Syria are restored after being badly damaged by ISIS. Italian art historians used a 3D printer to make replicas of the missing parts of the bust. They were originally made around the 2nd or 3rd centuries. And the restored ones will be returned to a museum in Damascus at the end of the month. That does it for us, for all of us here at EWTN News Nightly. To all of you around the world, I'm Lauren Ashburn. And don't forget, you can see every broadcast of the show on EWTN's YouTube channel. We leave you with a look at today's snow shower at the White House this morning. Good night, and God bless.